Majestic cities with countless temples, parks, and estates. Borders extending to the edges of the known world. People driven by the thirst for discovery and domination. You guessed it, I'm talking about the Calderae Empire. Though I wouldn't blame you if you thought I was talking about the Roman Empire. The Calderae Empire was similar to its real-life inspiration in many things. It was the strongest and most advanced civilization of its time. It was a home for many great warriors, artisans, and nobles. And just like the Roman Empire, it collapsed. Unlike the Roman Empire, it also shattered the whole world. The days of the Calderae Empire are long gone, but it didn't vanish without leaving any trace. The strongest manifestation of its greatness were beautiful cities and villages built by many elves over thousands of years. After all, they couldn't all perish along with the empire. That begs the question, what happened to the ancient elven cities? There are definitely not many things that could make a city and its entire population disappear. Unfortunately for Calderae and their cities, the great sundering caused by Gwynashar's conceit was one of those things. The continent was violently torn apart, and the seas rushed to close the gap in the world, consuming many lands in the process. The fate of most elven cities is very similar. They collapsed. Some of them ended up deep in the sea or on the shores, while others submerged on the land or thrown high into the mountains. Most of the population shared the fate of their cities, while those loyal to Ashara got turned into Nagas. Today, you can encounter ruins of elven cities in many parts of the world, usually overrun by Nagas clinging to the highborn past, or ghosts unable to come to terms with their horrible death. However, there are few cities whose fate differs from the rest. The forests of Darkshore hide the ruins of the two once thriving settlements, Bashalaram and Ametheran, were the twin towns constructed by Queen Ashara for some of her favorite highborn servitors. The governor of those cities was Athricus Narasin, an elf of considerable magical power. Athricus was near the Well of Eternity when it exploded, and was blasted far away. He barely survived, but soon found that he had been imbued with fell energies, which he could use to chain the souls of lesser highborn to himself, granting immortality. When Athricus returned to the Twin Cities, he found everything in ruins, and highborn clinging to the ground in a desperate attempt to survive. In the darkest tower, Narasin promised people salvation and casted a spell to protect them. The highborn survived, but now were trapped in Soulgems, destined to feed his eternal life. He lived the next 10,000 years at the top of the tower of Arthalax, practicing magic and slowly depleting Soulgems. He founded the cult of the Dark Strand with many talented warlocks, and even worked with the Shadow Council. But his foul doings soon attracted attention. He was killed by the Alliance adventurer, who also destroyed the few remaining soldiers, finally freeing the remaining souls of Bashalaram and Ametheran's citizens. Shandaral was established in Moonstone Forest as one of the northernmost outposts of the Calderae Empire. It was a repository of arcane relics and artifacts that the Highborn collected. When the Great Sundering happened, Shandaral and its population were spared from destruction, but soon found themselves in the heart of the new, icy and harsh continent of Northrend. The destruction of the Well of Eternity left them weak and vulnerable to disease, and the vast distance from other continents made them isolated from the rest of the world. The Highborn of Shandaral spent the next 4 millennia trying to sustain themselves, and slowly fading away. Until one day, they witnessed blue dragons crystallize living things and draw power from them. This ritual could help the elves regain the power vital to them, and so they tried to approach the dragons, who didn't want to interact with mortals and ignored their pleas for help. Out of desperation, a group of highborn sorcerers infiltrated the Nexus to learn the dragon's techniques. However, they decided to bite off more than they can chew and were caught, stealing some powerful relics. The elves escaped, but needless to say the blue dragons weren't very happy about this violation of their privacy, and soon came upon Shandaral. The city had no chance to survive this attack. Thus, the strongest highborn decided to use the techniques they had acquired from the Nexus to crystallize a small part of the forest and use its energies to defend themselves. Their attempt failed catastrophically, as it resulted in an enormous explosion of arcane energy, which crystallized the entire forest. The blue dragons sensed the impending doom and retreated in time. As for the most of the living beings in Moonstone Forest, their bodies were instantly shattered, while their spirits were cursed to wander, not realizing the horrible fate they had endured. Those that survived were twisted into maddened half-crystal creatures, bounded to roam the cursed land, from that moment called Crystal Sown Forest. Suramar was one of the major cities in the Calderae Empire. It was ruled by Grand Magistrix Patrick, and a small sect of highborn sorcerers were very loyal to Ashar. However, they started to doubt their queen's decisions during the War of the Ancients, and they certainly weren't big fans of demons corrupting the magnificent Temple of Elune and opening there another portal. Elisan and her followers decided to act by using the Pillars of Creation to close the portal and seal the temple. But they didn't want to join the war against Ashara, and preferred to isolate themselves by crafting the shield around the whole city and creating the Night Well to nourish their need for magic. When the Sundering happened, the shield saved Suramar from being destroyed, and the city's population continued to live in isolation for the next 10,000 years. During this time, Suramar continued to thrive, and arcane energies of the Night Well slowly transformed the city's population into the Nightborn. But it would eventually let them down, attracting the attention of the Burning Legion. They were given the choice to lower the barrier and submit, or be destroyed. Elisan and most of her advisors agreed to these demands, because surely this time a deal with demons won't lead to bad consequences. This didn't work out for her. Even though the movement against her, led by First Arcanist Talisra, was quickly crushed, the subsequent rebellion, aided by the heroes of Azeroth and armies from other elven races, was successful, resulting in a forceful resignation of Grand Magistrix Elisan, and the end of the Burning Legion's influence within the city. Nowadays, the city of Suramar stands stronger than ever and enters its time of prosperity, as people led by Talisra explore the rest of the world and expand Kingdom's territories for the first time in 10,000 years. Deep in the jungles of Thalas lie the ruins of a place with a tragic history. Thalas was a great city containing many arcane secrets within its walls. It was ruled by Prince Tortheldrin and his noble group of the most revered arcanists known as Chandrala. When the Calderae Empire decided to go out with a bang, the prince and other highborn of Thalas casted a great spell to shield their city and protect it from the destruction. They survived, but soon discovered that with the Well of Eternity now destroyed, their power and immortality were considerably diminished. Life in Thalas fell into stagnation. Without arcane energies, the highborn slowly languished and withered for many centuries. Meanwhile, Prince Tortheldrin was trying to find a solution for their miserable state, and eventually he came up with a risky plan. He summoned a strong demon named Imalthar, and immediately imprisoned him behind a grand force field. Tortheldrin's plan was to siphon his power and use it to return the highborn their former might. When the rest of the citizens found out about this, there were many objections. But all of them vanished once the Highborn experienced the flow of power they had longed for so many centuries. This plan worked well for thousands of years, but had a fatal flaw. The cost of Imalthar's imprisonment grew over centuries, until one day it overshadowed the rate at which energy could be siphoned and distributed. The Highborn couldn't accept the loss of Demon's magic they now heavily depended on. Prince Torthordrin knew that the demon could no longer sustain all of his people, and being the good and honorable ruler, he decided to find another source of magic, and, wait no, he slaughtered most of the city's population, leaving only a small group of Chandrila loyal to him. After the purge, there was once again enough energy to sustain the greatly reduced population. But the city started to decay. The buildings and pavements started to crumble and collapse, as there was no need for them since nobody would use them anymore. The remaining Highborn of Chandrila abandoned most of the city, leaving it for many wicked creatures and wild animals to settle. Prince Torthordrin and his people moved closer to Imalthar's prison, and now resided in the west wing of Elderthalas, many halls of which were still haunted by the spirits of the slaughtered citizens. The east wing of the city was occupied by the fell Satyrs, striving to corrupt the forests of Feralas. The rest of Elderthalas was settled by the ogres of the Garduni clan, who built a stronghold and began to hold popular gladiator games in the remains of amphitheater. The city of Elderthalas completely lost what was left of its glory, and even its name. It soon became known as Diamol, the name given to it by the ogres, who were now the dominating power of the whole region. If you think we have reached the rock bottom of the history of Elderthalas, you'll be pleasantly surprised to find out there is plenty of space underneath. The Satyrs' corruption of their part of the city grew stronger and unintentionally drove the Garduni's clan King Gordok crazy. He became bloodthirsty and commanded his clan to murder anyone they encountered. This soon raised concerns among the Horde, and it sent some forces to deal with the ogres. Eventually, the Horde adventurers stormed Diamol, killing the fell Satyrs and many of the Garduni ogres, including King Gordok. They also found Imalthar's prison and banished him, which really upset the Chandrila. Prince Torthordrin rallied his followers and tried to attack the adventurers, only to be decrowned by them. The remaining Highborn of Chandrila left Diamol, trying to find their new place in this world. They resurfaced again after a few years, with their new leader more than demon-shaped, seeking an audience with Tyrant Whisperwind. He convinced the High Priestess to accept the Highborn back into the Night Elven Society. Thus the Highborn of Chandrila found a new home in Darnassus, and a new purpose in teaching the next generation of Night Elf mages. The Garduni ogres soon returned to Diamol and resettled it, continuing to frequently hold gladiator games in the ruins of the city that was once called Elderthalas. And that's what happened to the ancient elven cities. So what do you think about their fate? Flavius thinks it was very blunt and reckless of the Highborn to let Elderthalas decay and crumble. Blood elves would never neglect their great cities. I asked him when was the last time he was in the western half of Silvermoon, and he hasn't spoken to me since. As for me, we may meet again pretty soon. Or not. I like to explore the corners of despair. You may leave your own questions in the comments, and I may even answer them. Thank you for watching. Till the next we meet.